What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you part 2 of my little Lurantis Vileplume mini-series, in which I look at 2 different versions of Lurantis and Vileplume. And before I get into the deck, just a reminder that if you guys liked this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, and click that subscribe button. Helps us out a ton, and lets us do more cool stuff for you guys. And for those of you who have not seen my part 1 of Lurantis Vileplume, what I'm doing is I am taking 2 different versions of the same basic deck idea and making that into 2 videos. Now, why that's different is because what I usually do is I take the deck idea like what I did with Golduck Starmie. I took the deck idea and then I made 2 different versions. One was a version that was wow. Jeez, what am I thinking of? One was a version that was just straight up Golduck Starmie with like Manaphy and other water support cards. Then another version was a Golduck Starmie and then Eeveelutions deck. And what I did was I did that all in one deck video. What I decided to try with Lurantis and Vileplume was to take that deck idea, do a first video that was just straight Lurantis Vileplume, and do a second video that was Lurantis Vileplume and Eeveelutions. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, and this is the Eeveelutions version of this deck. So really 2 questions of the day. One is, if you guys prefer that I do both versions of a deck in one video, let me know. If you guys like the fact that I did 2 different deck videos for both different decks, also let me know as well. And the second question of the day, which version of the deck do you think is better? Now, hold off judgment until you watch the matches that I'm in, because I really think once you see this deck in action, you might change your mind if you were thinking that the straight version is better. But either way, I'm just going to go jump right into the deck. Like I said, this is centered around Lurantis-GX and Vileplume. Lurantis Flower Supply accelerates energy. Solar Blade is a good 3 energy attack that does 120, and you heal 30 damage from this Pokemon. And then Lurantis-GX, for a single grass energy, you can do 50 damage times the amount of grass energy attached to this Pokemon. So Lurantis just kind of powers up itself and other Lurantises in the background, and then you just hit with Solar Blade and Lurantis-GX when you need to hit for a ton of damage. And then also, of course, we are pairing it with a line of Vileplume, just because we're going to be running Forest Giant Plants anyway, so you might as well throw Item Lock in there, because you have the energy acceleration with Lurantis in itself, so Vileplume's ability lock, or Item Lock, doesn't really hinder you that much. Now, I do have to say, this version of the deck, I did get the original list from my boy Aurabomb. Check him out if you guys haven't already, and I tweaked it a little bit. So what he originally had was he had 1 Eevee, 1 Flareon, and 1 Vaporeon. Flareon helps with the mirror match, Vaporeon helps with the fire matchup, which just kind of destroys us otherwise, and that is what he went with. However, when I was testing with this deck, I found that there were plenty of instances when I would go up against like Mega Rayquaza decks, Yveltal decks, to where Jolteon would be super helpful. So I decided to throw that one in there as well. So as you can see, I have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. There we go. Yeah, I did say the right amount of ones of Eevee through Flareon, Jolteon, and Vaporeon. And yes, I know that that does leave you susceptible to those things being prized. However, in this deck, you really can't afford to run more copies of like Eevee or a Jolteon or Vaporeon or Flareon, because, well, Eevee, first of all, only helpful in certain matchups. So you really only need 1. You don't want to run 2 because that clogs things up. And then as for the type of Eeveelutions, yes, like I said, susceptible to being prized. However, you don't want to run like 2 of those, because if you did, well, that's 8 cards right there, and that's 4 less cards that you get in streamlining, trying to get that first turn Vileplume. So 1, 1, 1, 1 actually really works out well, and I really like that. 4, 4 of Fomantis and Lurantis, because main attacker, you want to get that thing up ASAP. The ideal setup, turn 1, is to have 2 Lurantis, a Vileplume, an Eevee, and then play down one or 2 Shaymins. So that's the ideal setup. Get 2 attackers, get your Vileplume with the Float Stone, and an Eevee down. That way you can get the Eeveelutions up. And then I'm being realistic here, saying that we're going to play 2 Shaymins down, because only in a very, very, very rare scenario are you going to be able to get a turn 1 Vileplume and Lurantis in ideal setup without playing 2 Shaymins. Yes, it has happened. I have been able to get away with 1. However, 99% of the time you're going to be playing 2 Shaymin, so you're working with 3 bench spots, which is actually more than enough for this deck. So yeah, that's the ideal setup, and then 2/2/2 of Oddish through Vileplume, just so we can get a Vileplume and hopefully not have them prized when we need them. As for the items, very much just straight through. This is basically the same list as last time. You have Acro Bike and Trainers Mail. Both are great for going through your deck and just getting out cards, searching out cards you might need. Acro Bike helps throw things in the discard pile, like Vileplumes or Lurantis or Grass Energy for Revitalizer and then Flower Supply later. 2, Level Ball to search out Fomantis, Oddish, Gloom, Eevee, or even one of the Eeveelutions later. 1, Revitalizer to get out some of the grass Pokemon that were sent to our discard pile, because odds are you're going to have to Sycamore away or Ultra Ball away a Vileplume or a Lurantis or something like that early on if you can't get a Force of Giant Plants in play. And then especially with Vileplume, you just might not want to play it down yet. So you're like, well, I don't want to play Vileplume yet. I'm just going to throw that in the discard pile. Revitalizer allows you to be like, hey, I threw that in discard pile, but I get it right back. 4, Trainers Mail, like I said, just to help go through your deck as quickly as possible. 4, Ultra Ball guaranteed gets what we want when we want. Also puts Pokemon in the discard pile for Revitalizer and Grass Energy for Flower Supply. 4, Force Giant Plants absolute max number because you want to get that turn 1 Vileplume and you want to be able to evolve as soon as possible with all of your Pokemon minus the Eeveelutions. And then as for the supporters, 3/4 of N and Sycamore. That's a little bit higher than usual, but we do not have access to VS Seeker in this deck, so that's why I'm running another N instead of, well, the obvious lack of VS Seekers. 2, Lysandre. Could run 3. In fact, I suggest you try out 3. I just haven't found 3 to be that overly useful, so I decided to just go with 2. But definitely try out 3, because that is what a lot of Vileplume decks run, and it has obviously had a ton of success. 3, Float Stone. I would like to run 4, but just didn't really have room, so that we can get one on our Vileplume early. Do not play Vileplume down before you get it Float Stoned. I repeat, do not get a Vileplume down before you play a Float Stone onto it. Otherwise, your opponent just Lysandres that thing up. You're stuck spending 3 turns attaching energy to Vileplume in order to retreat, and then at that point, I mean, your opponent's just going to get a bunch of turns to set up, because yes, while they will be item locked, having an extra 2 to 3 turns is incredible for any deck, even under item lock. So by then, your opponent will probably be set up, or they'll have knocked out your Vileplume, so just wasting those attachments for your turn. And again, do not play Vileplume down until you have it Float Stoned. That is the biggest thing I can say about this deck. And then 8, Grass Energy, just because that's what everything that we attack with relies on, and by everything we attack with, I mean literally just Lurantis-GX. But yeah, I went through this deck pretty quickly this time, because you guys probably have already seen the other version of this deck, so you know what it does, and also it's a very straightforward strategy. So yeah, let's just go ahead and see this version of the deck in action. Alright, we have found one against EDWS21 with a Grass and Normal deck. So, Decidueye, Tauros, Lurantis, Vileplume, I mean, it's any one of those. In fact, it could be a Serena Tauros deck. I know I encountered one of those a long time ago. But either way, we do lose the coin flip, so we are going to, yeah, go second, I would assume so. Especially with Grass, I mean, you're able to fully evolve on turn 1. And I get a very solid starting hand. I mean, that's assuming that I get to actually play and I'm not just item locked to, you know, everything first turn. So my opponent does mulligan, meaning I get another card. And honestly, I mean, mulligans are nice, but I would rather have less mulligans and my opponent not have a hand that he can get a turn 1 setup with, because at that point, my deck is designed to be able to draw through pretty quickly. So as long as I just have a couple cards that I can work with, that's all I want. And I get a very nice starting hand. My opponent starts with a Shaymin. That is phenomenal for me. That means that's 1 less Shaymin that he can use to draw cards well, without using a supporter. So as long as my opponent doesn't get a turn 1 setup, I'll be in a good spot. My opponent immediately gets an Oddish down and a Grass in the discard pile. If this is a Lurantis Vileplume deck, then I'm in a lot of trouble, and that's exactly what it looks like. Because obviously there's the Oddish. I mean, this could be a Decidueye Vileplume deck, but I feel like Lurantis Vileplume is the much more popular version that's running around now. We even see a Gloom hit the discard pile. So my opponent is going to go ahead and Ultra Ball, probably grab a Shaymin or actually just grabs a Fomantis. Does that mean... So they either have a Shaymin or a supporter in their hand right now. We see the energy go into the Shaymin. Retreats into the Fomantis, and... Does that mean... Okay, my opponent's either slow playing me... Wow, my opponent just... Whoa. So my opponent just completely slow played me. Played out their entire hand. They have absolutely nothing. So my opponent's other Shaymin must have been prized, which is phenomenal for me. What I can do is Ultra Ball, get rid of the Forest Giant Plants and a Grass Energy to grab a Shaymin. I'm immediately going to be able to get up 2 Lurantises, which is phenomenal for me, and have it powered up. So if I can item lock my opponent, like I just win, and well, I mean, I just kind of win now anyway because my opponent wasn't able to get anything going. So, I mean, in that match, I would have aimed to have gotten a Vileplume and an Eevee out. That way Flareon could... Actually, Flareon would have been a huge, huge player in this matchup because it would have allowed my Lurantis to hit for weakness while his Lurantis would not. And yeah, my opponent had nothing, so it's obvious why they just forfeited. But anyway, too short of a match. Let's go ahead and try to find another one with this deck. Alrighty, we have found another one against Myri with a Grass and Psychic deck. So it looks like we are probably up against another, like, Lurantis Vileplume deck, but they're also running Unknown, which help draw cards. I mean, don't get me wrong. Unknown is very, very good and very strong in decks like that where you just want to... You have a certain amount of cards that you just want to get, and you want to have every means necessary of being able to run through your deck as fast as possible. We do win the coin flip, meaning we will get to go first, which is absolutely phenomenal for us. What's a little bit less phenomenal is the fact that we started off with, you know, just a couple Lurantises and nothing, no basic Pokemon, so unfortunate right there. Once again, my Flareon is going to play a big part in this matchup, so I'm going to want to get that thing up ASAP. I start with actually a pretty... Well, I guess as long as not all of my Shaymin aren't prized, then this is a solid hand. But, I mean, I'll be able to put a Vileplume and a Forest in my discard pile. I'll be able to Float Stone up a potential Oddish if I'm able to draw into that. So I have options of what I can do first turn, and I have the potential to get a turn 1 Vileplume, and that is actually really, really cool. It's a Mega Alakazam Decidueye deck, which I mean, that's actually pretty awesome. So what I am going to do, actually, instead of grabbing a Shaymin, is go ahead and grab an Oddish. That way I can use the Vileplume immediately, Float Stone that thing up, and then N to get a fresh hand. And I actually have a version of the deck that my opponent is using in the future, except it doesn't use Alakazam. It uses another Pokemon with a similar strategy behind it. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it was a strategy. It was a combination that was given to me by a really one of my cool subs that I mean, if you guys have ideas, I love to hear it, because the idea that my sub gave me is really, really cool, and I can't wait to show you guys it. But either way, what I am just doing is I'm doing what this deck does. You run through your deck enough to where you have a couple attackers, and then in the very end you show a Vileplume. That's not even proper grammar. You show a Vileplume. What am I saying? Where you play a Vileplume. And there we go. I am just going to Level Ball. Unfortunately, I will not be able to get a Vileplume up turn 1. However, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I will have 2 Lurantis set up. I will have energy in the discard pile. I have a Float Stone. I mean, it's not the worst setup in the world. Ideally, I would have had an Eevee down. That way I can Flareon next turn, and I would have a Vileplume as well to lock my opponent out of items. But as long as I get my item lock set up eventually, I think that I will win this matchup. My opponent does play the Spirit Link, which is the one item that I was most worried about, because if you can't play items, then you can't Spirit Link up your Alakazams, meaning you have to burn a turn in order to Mega Evolve, and my opponent actually turns out not to have anything. So that is phenomenal for me. He just has to evolve the Dartrix and play the Alakazam down. So what I think I'm going to do is play the energy, I think, onto that Lurantis, just because I can go ahead and power up my active Lurantis later. And there we go. That's what I'm talking about. I'm going to play another Fomantis. Play an Ultra Ball, get rid of the Oddish and the Gloom to grab... Okay, I've gotten rid of both of my other Lurantises, so that's unfortunate. I think I'm going to grab the Vaporeon just because I'm going to discard that with Sycamore next turn. And then I'm going to play the Shaymin down. I kind of give up on my dream of having a Flareon this game, but I don't think I'll need it if I can lock my opponent out, which I go ahead and do. And there we are. We're going to go ahead and Flower Supply, damage the Alakazam, and then I'm going to put one energy on this Lurantis and then another energy onto my other Lurantis, because I can one-shot the Alakazam, or not one-shot, I will be able to knock out the Alakazam next turn with a with Lurantis' other attack, and even if he damages me for suppression, I will be able to heal that off immediately, which is exactly what I want. And I'm just in such a phenomenal position right now. Yeah, my opponent does forfeit. That item lock is so powerful, but anyway, another short match where I did not get to use my Eevee or any of my Eeveelutions, so a little unfortunate right there, but I mean, that's just the power of item lock. As soon as you get that down, a lot of times your opponents are just going to forfeit. So yeah, let's go ahead and try to find another one, see if we can get an Eeveelution to do some work with this deck. Alrighty, we have found another one. Wow, voice crack against Chris973 with a dark and normal deck. So unless this is an Yveltal deck, once again, my Eeveelutions will not be doing much of anything. I do get to go first, and once again, wow, I get a phenomenal opening hand. Start with a Fomantis, that's exactly what you want. I have Trainers Mails, I have Acro Bike, I have Ultra Ball, I have another Fomantis if I want to play it. And yeah, beautiful, beautiful start. I should be able to get a turn 1 Vileplume, and I even draw another Ultra Ball. So that is even better. What I am going to do is Ultra Ball, get rid of the Fomantis and the Acro Bike to grab an Oddish. Well, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and grab an Oddish. I just wanted to check to see how many I had in the deck. Let's play Oddish there. Go ahead and Trainer's Mail, see if I can get a Forest, which I do. That is beautiful. And here is where we just kind of explode. See what I can get off the Trainer's Mail, see if it's a Level Ball. No, it's an Ultra Ball, but you know what? That works just as well, because I'll get one less card from Shaymin, but I will have more searching options. And yeah, so super explosive turn 1. Let's go ahead and Ultra Ball, get rid of the Forest and the Grass energy. In this deck, you don't mind getting rid of energy early, just because you do have the ability to get that back with Flower Supply. Let's play that on to my Fomantis. Shaymin once again, see if I can get a Float Stone and a Gloom or something like that. I get a Vileplume, so what I am going to do is Ultra Ball, get rid of my N. And do I want to get rid of the Gloom to be able to Revitalizer? I don't think so. I think I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of the Lysandre. Well, I guess I'm going to be Sycamoring my hand away anyway, so it doesn't matter. Let's play the Gloom down. Let's see, how much is in my discard pile? It's fine. I'm going to go ahead and play the energy on the Lurantis and Sycamore away the Vileplume, because I should not get the Revitalizer. Slightly unfortunate right there, but let's go ahead and play the Float Stone onto the Gloom and the Shaymin. I did not want a Vileplume before I had a Float Stone. That is one of the biggest mistakes you can make with this deck. I know I say that over and over and over, but do not Vileplume until you have a Float Stone, because especially without DCEs and only relying on one Olympia, Lysandre is your worst enemy, and especially with everybody running 2 to 3 with everybody running about 2 copies. There we go. See, that Lysandre would have immediately been a huge, huge problem if I had Vileplumed immediately, because my opponent would have been able to bring up my Vileplume. I would have been able to Float Stone it, and he would have just been able to buy the time that he needed. So even though this does allow my opponent to play down Ultra Ball, that is okay with me, just because I cannot afford to have to manually attach for 3 turns with my Vileplume. My opponent will get another Darkrai into Shaymin. That's suboptimal, but again, I didn't want to give my opponent the opportunity to Lysandre to buy a bunch of time and potentially just build up a Darkrai in the background while I had no choice but to let him. Drawing into the Shaymin is not what I wanted, because I wanted to be able to Ultra Ball for another one if I needed to. But either way, okay, I get another... I'm going to be able to get another Fomantis, that's for sure. Now, I need to grab my Revitalizer with one of these Trainers Mails. And if I do, I'll be in a great position, which... Oh, I do get. So let's go ahead and grab the Revitalizer. I'm hoping I can get a... well, a Sycamore. I was going to say Supporter, but Sycamore is the one that I wanted. I'm able to get exactly what I want off of the Trainers Mails. Attach the energy to the Shaymin, Revitalizer, grab a Fomantis, and... Or, not a Fomantis, a Lurantis, and a Vileplume. So let's evolve that up. Retreat into my Lurantis that has the energy on it, and then Vileplume up as well. And here we go. Let's go ahead and Flower Supply. Damage this Darkrai, and I think... So let's attach one energy to the Lurantis on the bench, just because, I mean, that's the thing that I'm going to want to... I'm going to need a backup attacker. And then attach another energy onto the active Lurantis. That way I can knock out my opponent's Darkrai next turn if I get an energy attachment with a Chloroscythe GX. And yeah, so I locked my opponent out. My opponent plays the Parallel City. This is exactly why I decided to hold on to my... Forced Giant Plants, and my opponent does end me. Well, to be fair, I didn't have any choice but to hold on to them because I had no means of discarding them, but I still held on to them, and okay, I draw into this, so this is actually pretty nice. What I can do is my opponent Dark Pulses, gets 60 damage on my Lurantis, but this is great for me because what I can do is counter... let's see, how do I want to play this? Let's first counter his Stadium with my Forced Giant Plants. Do I want to play the Eevee down? Let's attach the energy onto the active Lurantis. And then, do I want to Eevee? I really don't know if I want to Eevee. I don't think so. I'm going to hold on to my hand just in case. Well, because, I mean, I still have the knockout on the Shaymin regardless. I want to hold on to the Eevee in case my opponent plays down an Yveltal or something like that. That way I have the option of getting a Jolteon. But I don't want to commit to it in case my opponent does find a way to cause me problems. My opponent does just bring active his Darkrai. That's the right play because Shaymin was going to go down in one shot to Lurantis anyway. My opponent does just Sycamore away his hand, and yeah, all of those energy accelerating cards he can't use at all. Okay, there we see the Yveltal. That is why I held on to the Eevee, especially because I do have the Jolteon in my hand. Let's play the Eevee down. That way I have a one-shot on my opponent's Yveltal and potential Yveltal EX should he choose to go in that. Play the other Fomantis, just maybe. Yeah, let's go ahead and play another Fomantis, and then might as well just evolve it immediately into a Lurantis because I can. And let's go for a Solar Blade, damage the Darkrai, and heal 30 damage off of this Lurantis. I mean, worst case scenario, I just Sycamore away my hand and draw into a Grass Energy and just Flower Supply, so... I mean, again, phenomenal position. There's nothing really my opponent can do. He does get energy onto this, onto his Yveltal, which means that it is a great thing that I decided to play down an Eevee so that I can Jolteon later. Unfortunately, I do get End, so I won't be able to Jolteon, but what I do get is Grass Energy. Oh no! I could have played the Grass Energy onto the Lurantis and finally got a Jolteon into play so the Eeveelutions could have done something, so... Unfortunately, once again, the Eeveelutions didn't do anything. However, you saw what they were going to be able to do. I was going to be able to knock out that Yveltal and potential Yveltal EX if my opponent decided to bring one out and go into it. But again, item lock was just way too strong. Once I got it into play, my opponent couldn't overcome it. So, yeah, once again, another match that Lurantis Vileplume did work and Eeveelutions did nothing. But they had the potential to do something, so that counts, maybe, kind of, sort of. Either way, I'm going to try to find one more and see if Eeveelutions can put in some work. Not just with potential, but with actually doing something. Alright, we have found one last one. Let's see if Eeveelutions can put in work, and it doesn't look like it because we're up against a Fighting and Psychic deck. So, I mean, unless it's like Mega Ray with Fighting and Psychic, I really don't see the Eeveelutions putting in much work. We do win the coin flip, so we will be able to go first, and, well, I mean, I'm going to play this out just because, I mean, I can, and I obviously have to, but okay, this looks like a Passimian deck, actually, with the Revive and the obvious Fighting Energy. Well, not Fighting Energy, but the Scorched Earth and the DCE. I do mulligan once again, and yeah, I mean, there's almost no doubt in my mind that this is a Passimian deck. I mean, I would be really shocked if it wasn't, just because of all the cards my opponent runs that are just very reminiscent of a Passimian deck. And I do start off with a Fomantis and a pretty solid hand, actually. So, like I said, Eeveelutions won't be doing much work, unfortunately. However, I mean, I can still play this out with Lurantis Vileplume because it's still a very strong deck, and I want to show you that this deck functions just fine in situations where the Eeveelutions aren't going to be integral in the strategy. Like, they aren't just going to clunk up the deck to where it makes it a lot harder to use. I mean, granted, mulligan cards never hurt ever, but alright, I get a perfect starting hand. I mean, I honestly could not ask for much better. I mean, maybe a Float Stone, but again, I don't want to draw into a Float Stone this early, I guess, just because I want to be able to draw into that later. Let's go ahead and evolve up Gloom, play the Forest Giant Plants down, evolve up the Fomantis into a Lurantis, Ultra Ball, get rid of the... Let's get rid of the Acro Bike and the Flareon. The Acro Bike would have been nice, but, I mean, I want to keep the Vileplume just in case I don't... in case my other Vileplume is prized. But either way, playing down the Shaymin, draw into some more cards, see what we can get if it's something we can work with. And I mean, it's definitely stuff we can work with, because I can Trainers Mail, see if I get something good off of that, maybe a Float Stone. Nope, I get an Acro Bike. I mean, that's still fine, because it still allows me to blow through my deck. Let's Ultra Ball, get rid of a Grass Energy and a Gloom, just because I won't need either of those at first. There's the Vileplume is in my deck. The other Vileplume is, so what I am going to do is just grab another Shaymin, increase my odds of drawing something good off the Acro Bike, and, well, I get an N, so at least I have a supporter should I need one. Let's play the Shaymin down again, and like I said, I'm waiting on that Float Stone. Even if I don't get a Float Stone, I'm going to just wait on the Vileplume, and, well, I draw into 2 Float Stones, so let's do that, play the Fomantis down, and do I have anything good that I can Revitalizer yet? Let's play the Float Stone onto the Shaymin, and then, yeah, let's just end. I should be able to draw into a way to get the Vileplume again, and, well, I mean, I just straight up draw into Vileplume, so that's pretty nice. Let's Acro Bike, see if I can get something good, and I get another Lurantis, so I will have 2 attackers and a Float Stone Vileplume set up. Let's go ahead and play another Fomantis, because why the heck not, and then Vileplume up my Gloom. I'm going to hold on to the Lurantis for now, just because if my opponent Lysandre's up one of my Fomantises to try to stall for time, I can just evolve that one and then Flower Supply. So, I mean, even though I didn't draw through as much of my deck as I usually do, I still have a very, very, very good start. I mean, I have 2 attackers potentially ready, I have a Vileplume, and I even draw into a Lysandre again. So that is okay with me. Screw it, let's go ahead and evolve. And what do I want to do? Let's go ahead and attach the energy onto this Lurantis, and then I can't Chorus Scythe to knock out, so I am just gonna Flower Supply, attach the energy to this active Lurantis, so that I am able to just one-shot Passimian Mew whatever my opponent decides to play down. Yeah, a Lysandre will be able to kind of stall for a little bit of time against me, but all I need is to just draw an energy in order to draw out of it. So I'm really not worried about that at all. And at this point, I mean, I think Lurantis should be able to just plow through my opponent's entire field, because healing that 30 damage each turn will be huge. Let's counter the Forest Giant Plants, and yeah, let's go for a Solar Blade. Knock out this Passimian. We don't have to worry about fighting Fury Belt, because that is an item, and as you can see, the Eeveelutions are going to do absolutely nothing for me, but that doesn't matter. I was just able to discard and draw right through them, and still set up perfectly. I did counter my opponent's Stadium just because my opponent does re-counter it, and then Sycamore's. I mean, Passimian, it needs items in order to deal consistent damage. Like, it can't do the consistent damage if it doesn't have, like, Revive, Super Rod, all that stuff. So, I mean, it's doing 40 damage at this point. That is absolutely nothing. And what I can do this turn is Lysandre in the other Passimian to where my opponent can literally do nothing. I mean, my opponent can use Orangaru's Psychic, but, like, that requires 3 energy, and that's just not something he can afford to do. And my opponent sees this, and with no Passimian in play and no way of reviving them, he does just forfeit. We do complete the daily challenge, so that was pretty nice as well. Just kind of the cherry on top of this deck video. So, yeah, unfortunately, the Eeveelutions didn't get to do anything on camera. Like, they didn't get to contribute anything on camera, but in the matches that I was setting them up, you did see what they had the potential to do. So, in my opinion, I actually think that the Eeveelutions version of this deck is better because they don't clunk up as much as you think they would, and they can contribute a lot to a lot of different matchups, making it beneficial to you. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.